You get caught up in like, okay, I got to be good on first down. I got to get a third down conversion. I got to stay ahead of the chains. And I believe in all that. Like, that is a formula for success. But at the end of the day, like, our job is to put the ball in the end zone. And let's don't lose sight of that.
We're back for another week of Accelerate Everything here on the Coaching Coordinator Podcast, and talking with our host, Dub Maddox, about our next guest, Barry Lunney Jr., who's the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Illinois. Dub, tell us about Barry.
Well, I've known Barry a long time. He's been coach for a long time. Barry was started 40 games at the University of Arkansas as a quarterback, so he is got a big background in football. His dad was a Hall of Fame coach in Arkansas, so he understands football, and he's been coaching at a high level for a long time. But he also has a unique experience because he was coaching in high school for 8 years at Bentonville High School in Arkansas, and that's where I got to know him real well. So I like the perspective Barry gives from being in both of those realms and the things that he learned being in both high school and college.
We'll be back with our takeaways for this one following the episode. So here's the episode with Barry Lunney Jr., offensive coordinator at Illinois.
Our guest today is Barry Lunney Jr. Barry is currently the offensive coordinator at the University of Illinois. Prior to that, Barry was the assistant head coach and offensive coordinator at UTSA under Jeff Traylor. He also served as the tight ends and special teams coach under Brett Bielema at the University of Arkansas. Barry, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dub. It's good to see you, my man.
Barry, we go way back. I first met you when you were starting out as the quarterbacks coach at the University of Tulsa, but got to know you real well when you were the offensive coordinator at Bentonville High School. For listeners that don't know, you started out coaching in college and then went down to high school to work with your dad, who is a Hall of Fame legend in Arkansas. The one thing I was always impressed with watching your offenses was you always had an identity. You always knew what you're going to see. You're going to get 11 and 12 personnel, a steady dose of pin and pull, inside zone with RPOs. You're going to run drive concepts, bootlegs, nakeds, and you're going to take shots. Talk to us about what shaped your offensive philosophy going from college to high school.
Yeah, that's a great question. I never intended on being a high school coach. That was kind of my dad's deal. And when I was in college, I didn't even go do my student teaching to get my certification. I was like, I remember my academic advisor, she was like, okay, well, you got to do your student teaching. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't have any plans on doing that. She was right. I called her years later and I was like, you know what? You were right. I should have gone ahead and gone through with that. And so I went about my way. And obviously, to your point, Dub, that's where I first interacted with you when I was a young coach at Tulsa and coaching quarterbacks there. And I think I had about, between being a GA and my stops at San Jose and Tulsa, I had about, I think, 7 years in Division I. And then I guess that was in 2005. My dad had taken the Bentonville job. I had just taken the job, or I had been offered the offensive coordinator job at Samford. Okay, so I was at San Jose. We got let go. I got offered the Samford coordinator job at the convention. And I wasn't super fired up about it, just for a lot of different reasons. It was an opportunity. I was appreciative of the opportunity, but it just didn't sit well with me. And long story short, my dad takes that job. My wife is from Coffeyville, Kansas, and her mother was sick and with cancer. And it just came about one day. My dad said, hey, look, what about if you just came with me for 1 year? This is a big job, similar to the jobs that you've been a part of in Oklahoma, as far as it's a large program. Bentonville was a booming program. So what if you came with me for a year, help install the offense, got your feet underneath, you could be around your mother-in-law, get Janelle around her mom, and then you jump back into it. Anyway, we did. And I thought it was going to be a year. And a year turned into 8. But as I go into that first year, like I had been in several different systems already, played in a system. And then my last year at Tulsa, we hired, Keith Burns was the head coach. We hired a guy named Dan Lounsbury. And Dan had been with Mike Leach and Hal Mumme at Kentucky. And so we implemented, the air raid, right? And when I went to San Jose, we did not run the air raid. We ran more of the system that I played in when I was at Arkansas. And so when I kind of went all in on the air raid, right? So my first year or two, it was like big giant splits. It was mesh. It was cell cuts. It was like drive to and it was like we were going to throw it away. And we did. But what I found out in high school, and I knew this, is that the quarterback that we inherited, he left. And I didn't get a chance to recruit another one, And so we didn't have anybody else that could really flip the ball around. And it's really that in 2000 and golly, so I was 5, 6, 7, about 2008 or 9, I can't remember. Kind of part of one of these off-season studies, I had started watching Nevada and with Kaepernick run the pistol, and really just started, like a lot of people during that time, just really started studying a lot of film. I got my hands on all 12 of their games. I can't remember how I got it, but I got it and I downloaded it in our system. And I just started studying it. And really, it was that year, the first couple of years was air raid. It was that year that I just kind of went all in on what you alluded to earlier. Like, okay, 11 and 12, inside zone, pin and pull, boots, nakeds. And then when I had a quarterback that I felt could chunk it around a little bit, we expanded that a little bit. But that really kind of became our identity. And shoot, there was one year in 2000, I think it was 10 or 8. We snapped every snap all year long in the pistol, even on third down. I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to tell where the back's at. I'm just going to do it. And we did it. And so that's kind of how philosophically we settled into kind of what we were doing structurally there at Bentonville. It was really motivated by the pistol and Colin Kaepernick and the guys there at Nevada that made that thing so popular. I just kind of gravitated, and that became our identity there. And it was good to us.
Barry, you started 40 games as the quarterback at the University of Arkansas. And while you're at Bentonville, you got a call to go back up to the college ranks at your alma mater. And you started out as the tight ends coach. I really feel like that's a unique position to coach because it requires you to learn run game, pass protections. You have to know everything within an offense. What are some of the things that you learned in coaching tight ends that helped you as an offensive coordinator today?
Oh, let me tell you, there's a saying in coaching that you coach how you were coached, right? I believe a lot of that. I think there is some guys that don't like how they were coached and they have a turnabout face and they go a different direction. But I think a lot of times, and so up until that point, up until 2012, really everything I had known about football was what I was taught as a player in college, right? And the coaches I played for Greg Davis, who was the offensive coordinator my first couple of years, taught me a lot of football. And then when I went about my way in college, it was really that same tree, if that makes sense, you know? And so up until 2013, when Coach Bielema hired me, like what I knew is what I knew. So 2013, Coach Bielema leaves Wisconsin to come to Arkansas, and he hired 8 of his 9 coaches. He basically put an APB out for somebody that could connect him with the alumni base or the former players and the high school coaches, and literally like the job fell in my lap. I mean, it was like a one-man race, and I just didn't need to finish second, right? Now, the only caveat about that was he calls me and he says, hey, listen, I got my tight ends job open, right? So I'm like, okay, yeah, no problem. Of course, I told him that when he asked me, you know, he says, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. You know, I love tight ends. I'd never coached tight ends a day in my life. So I go on like a 48-hour crash course of trying to figure out how to prepare for this interview. You can imagine, I mean, the opportunity of a lifetime to go back to your alma mater, jump from high school to the SEC under Brett Bielema. Like, I was like, I got to get this right. So I'm on YouTube. I'm calling my friends that are coaching them, and I'm taking notes like crazy. I mean, I never studied so hard. So I go down to the interview, and I'm with them. Jim Chaney is the offensive coordinator, right? So Brett had hired Jim Chaney from Tennessee to be the coordinator, and all the other stuff for me to talk about Arkansas history, to talk about high schools, to talk about the alumni base, that was like an easy A for me, right? And so I was just kind of dreading the part to talk about tight ends because I'm basically going to spit back information I'd learned the previous 48 hours. And so lo and behold, we go to the interview. Chaney, it goes to the football part. I go downstairs. Jim and I are in the room, and he goes, all right, get on the board. And I was like, all right, here we go. Like, here it comes. He goes, draw me up your favorite run and your favorite pass that you do at Bentonville High School. I'm like, okay, is this a trick question? You know, so I did it. I'm in a few minutes into it. He goes, all right, sit down. And I go, Jim, I'm just getting started. He said, just sit down. He goes, I just want to make sure that you can communicate and that you're not a dummy. You know, that's basically what he said. He goes, I'm going to teach you what you need to know about tight ends. And I was like, okay. So I literally went on the interview. They never talked about tight end play. I knew why I was getting hired, but also in the same breath, I knew what an amazing opportunity it was about to be for me to really rebirth, revitalize, revamp my coaching career up until that point, and to be in a pro-style system under a guy that was so knowledgeable like Jim. And Jim had coached the tight ends in the NFL for the Rams. And you can imagine there was a lot to learn. And I'd like to think I went from knowing nothing about coaching that position to over the period of 7 years of coaching them, learning a lot about the position. I fell in love with the position. I loved it. I embraced it, to your point. Like, to be able to be in the middle of the run game and to be able to be in the middle of the passing game and the protections, it's the next best thing to coaching quarterbacks, right? And in some ways, it's even better because for a future OC, for a guy that had aspirations to get back and be a coordinator again, I couldn't have picked a better position and or better mentors in Jim Chaney and Dan Enos to be underneath. And so that experience, that time I spent coaching that position, just completely changed the way I understood the game, the way I saw the game, the details and the nuances that went around with that. It was just a great experience for me from a professional standpoint.
Barry, after Arkansas, you made another leap to the assistant head coach role and offensive coordinator at UTSA under Jeff Traylor. Coach Traylor is an absolute stud. When he was the head coach at Gilmer High School in Texas for many years, winning state championships, I went down one spring and tried to learn from him and his staff and was thoroughly impressed. What are some of the best things that you did when joining up with Coach Traylor and building your offense at UTSA?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Coach Bielema gets let go. Jeff and I worked under Chad Morris. That's where we got connected, right? So I coached tight ends, he coached running backs. We obviously formed a really strong relationship, got to know him very well, just super respected him very much, the way he went about his business. And so he gets the job. I'm going to spare you all the details, but he gets the job. He offers me the coordinator job. And basically we started talking about it. And he was always, when we were with Chad, so Chad, the hurry up, pace, kind of some Art Briles principles in there, a lot of Gus Malzahn influence. And Jeff, to your point, I think he oversaw maybe the highest scoring offense in the history of the state of Texas 1 year at Gilmer. And they were like spread, warp speed, let's go, 10 personnel, spread it out, and let's go. And Jeff calls me and says, hey, look, man, I like to spread. I love tempo. I love to score points. He goes, but I'm not so sure you can win a championship anymore. People have kind of caught up to it a little bit. Like, I want to be able to run the ball, and I want to bring some of your Brett Bielema, Danny Pro style, with it. I want to kind of blend the two worlds together a little bit, right? And so that was really the generic vision that he laid out, and he hired a phenomenal staff. Will Stein was our receivers coach. Matt Maddox was the O-line coach who had been in the Browse system. Kurt Traylor, Jeff's brother, was our tight ends coach. Julian Griffin, our running back. We had tons of coaches that had all these different unique experiences. And so we just sat down, Will and I and Justin Burke, who's now the OC there. We just had the opportunity to sit down, and we really just built a system from scratch. And I don't mean like we built the plays. You know what I mean? We built the vernacular. And that was something that was really important to me and to us, is to build what Jeff wanted to call our offense. Not Barry Lunney's offense, not Will Stein's offense, not Jeff Traylor's offense, not Justin Burke or Matt Maddox's, like all these different people that have these different experiences and had been at some really successful places offensively. It was really a fascinating experience. To be honest with you, it was probably the most fun I've ever had in coaching, because we were just able to come in for the day and say, all right, here's what we're going to talk about, the run game today. Matt, what do you believe in? What do you believe in? Okay, what are the holes that leaves? What about this? Do you love pin and pull? Do you like toss? Oh, yeah, I have never done toss sweep, but I think that's awesome. And Matt our line coach, had been at Butler and in the junior college system. He coached in every system, so he was a brilliant line coach. He could do anything. And so that's really kind of how we went about building that system and then playing to the strengths of our team. And fortunate for us, we had inherited some really talented players. And Jeff is phenomenal about getting guys to buy in culturally, and our offense just took off. We had really good staff, but the game is about players. And Jeff was always talking about that, and he was so right about that. But anyway, that's kind of how we ended up. And then we took that offense. And one of the things that was cool I learned in the offseason, we were talking before the cast started, Dub, about going to the Bengals. And their coordinator said something in front of their team that I thought really resonated. And it wasn't necessarily profound, but it did hit home. He was like, hey, guys, listen, this offense, it's like a living organism. It's growing, it's breathing, it's spreading, it's moving. Because if it's not, it's dying. And so what my offense is at Illinois, the base DNA is what that was built at UTSA, but it's also growing and breathing, moving, shifting, and I thought that was really good.
Absolutely. Adapt or die. I want to shift gears and talk about calling plays. It's something that I think there's an art to play calling, and you've been around some great coaches over your career. I'm interested in knowing what are some of the maxims that you've picked up from all the guys you've worked with, and what are some of those things in your head that you're thinking about as you're calling plays during a game?
Well, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing for me is like when I went to San Antonio, and we've talked about this before in some of our conversations. And when I went to San Antonio, it was about week 4 of our first, I don't know, week 3 or 4, I don't know. And I can't remember when it was. I'm calling plays, and Coach Traylor says, Barry? And I said, yeah. He goes, we're not going to score unless you try. I was like, what, that again? He goes, you're not going to score unless you try to score. And I was like, okay, message sent. First, when I said that, I was like, well, I'm trying, and then I thought, okay, I got it, and so like, that was really empowering for me to hear that from him. And just a reminder is like, our job is to score. Sometimes you can lose sight of that. And obviously you would hope you would lose sight, but you get caught up in like, okay, I got to be good on first down. I got to get a third down conversion. I got to stay ahead of the chains. And I believe in all that. Like, that is a formula for success. But at the end of the day, like, our job is to put the ball in the end zone, and let's don't lose sight of that. And that is just kind of a mentality. So that was a really good one that I picked up over the years. I think one of the things that Coach says a lot, that Brett says a lot, and I've heard it, is volume reflects confidence. And so when I'm in front of the guys and I'm talking about the game plan, or if I'm in between series, or even if the way I call a play, like, volume reflects confidence. And so if I go in, I've caught myself as a play caller calling things that maybe sometimes I don't really believe in, to necessarily not appease somebody, but like maybe even we're struggling and I'm like, oh, let's try this. In my mind, volume reflects confidence. That's a good one. You're not going to score if you don't try. I think that's a good one. I think obviously the one that most of us all are tuned into is like, you got to think players, not plays. We can get caught up trying to be fancy and do the pin. So to find that right balance between it is about the players, but also to have enough plays, and that's the art of the business, right? And that's what we're all constantly chasing. And obviously, Dub, you've done a phenomenal job as a play caller, and the offenses that you've structured and can all these things. Like, it's always a constant pursuit of that right balance. Each year, each player, each quarterback, each offense is different. Each game is different. That's why it's such a challenging yet rewarding opportunity to be a play caller and a coordinator.
Dub, I was excited this offseason when I saw you came out with the art of play calling and really dives into and take a look at play calling. I think no one else has really done this in the past in putting some educational materials out there. So something highly useful here for coaches.
Yeah, it was, something I've been working on for some time. I really felt like I needed to go deeper and have a better framework for myself as a play caller, and just studying guys, what makes a good play caller. And really it starts with the analytics. And so analytics is a really popular trend and everybody's studying those. But I want to wrap my mind around, some of these analytic probabilities and how can I build it into a play calling process to help coaches just make sure they're working the probabilities in their favor. And so we put a 4.5-hour course together, and it has a 60-page workbook that goes along with it, 20 modules. And we just take you through kind of step by step to build a framework of how to package your offense into a system that allows you to play the game out before it's played, and then also making sure you're working the probabilities in your favor. So it's something that a lot of coaches have watched for the last 3-4 months that it's been out, and I've got a lot of good feedback from it. And so I think it's something, if you're out there and you're a new play caller, or maybe you're an experienced one, I think there's nuggets in there, no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, that you're going to be able to walk away with and use this upcoming season. Yeah, if you could go to our website, r4footballsystem.com, it's there on our website, and then we've got a discount code that we'll share out in the show notes for you guys that are listening if you want to take part of that. And again, look forward to your feedback on that and hope it helps you this season.
Barry, you've been calling plays for a long time. Do you prefer to be on the field or up in the box?
I'm in the field. I started the season in the box last year, and I knew better. I just knew better, but I thought, I can go up there, and I hated it. I just can't. I feel so trapped and you feel so helpless. I hated it. I knew better. And I'd been up there before. I went my first few years at San Antonio, my first couple of games. And I was like, this is dumb. And my thought was, I'm going to try to take the emotion out of the game, a little bit more calculated. But that's not who I am. That's just not me. Like, I need to be emotionally invested. Yeah, it's like Todd Monken. He sits up there like a cold stone assassin, calls the plays, and it's like, I can't do that.
I don't know about you, but I have quite a few skeletons of play calls in my closet that still haunt me to this day. Are there any particular bad play calls that stand out over your career that allowed you to learn a great lesson from that would maybe help some of us today to not make the same mistake?
Is there a time limit on these podcasts? Well, in recent, to your point, one of the things, here's the other thing to kind of bring the previous question of, Jeff said this too, and I totally subscribe to this. He said, hey, look, here's the deal. You're going to call 70 plays during a game. Okay, you're going to call 70, whatever that number. It may be 80, it may be 60, right? You're going to play 70. And at the end of the day, you're going to turn on the film, and there's going to be about 3 to 5 that you're going to want back. Okay? And I tell our players that here at Illinois. I say, here's the deal. And I'm fighting and scratching and clawing to keep that number to 2. You know what I mean? Like, I want there to be a game where there's none. I never had one, but I certainly don't want it to be 8. You know what I mean? So 3 to 5 times a game, you're going to call one that on Sundays you're going to want back. On the flip side of that, 3 to 5 times a game, you're going to call one that you're like, I got them. And I'm fighting for that to be more like 7 to 8. But the truth is, in the middle is where the game's won, right? Those other 55 to 60 plays, that's when it really becomes about the players. Okay, the players knowing what they're doing, being confident in what they're doing, being great in their details and their techniques, because that's really where the game is won. And I tell my guys that all the time. And I'll tell them on Sunday, I'll say, here's one right here, boys. This is on Coach Lunney. And this one right here, this one might have been on Coach Lunney too. That was a good one. And that's not to put the onus on, because we're all in it together. But inevitably, you're going to call plays that you want back. And sometimes they get swept under the rug, and sometimes they're in front of everybody in the whole nation to see. And that's just part of the business. There's really 2 that I can think of even since I've been here in the Big Ten, right? Tons of respect for the defenses. It's a different type, the style of play here is like, it's just unique. Now, I think it's shifting a little bit with the change in what we're doing, but the defenses are just really, really good. They're stingy. 2 years ago, Doug, I think we're 7-1. We're playing Michigan State. We have to a great start. Michigan State's coming off of the week where they got in a fight with Michigan. They got a bunch of dudes suspended. They played phenomenal. We get down the goal line the first series of the game, and we ran a little 13 personnel, like unbalanced, short motion, crack on the end spot for man coverage. And then we kick with the tackle, kind of a little tackle sweep. And to be honest with you, I called it. The scheme was good, but the call was bad because we just did not have the volume of reps to have a game ready. And so we come up short on a critical 3rd down. We get blanked. And it really was the turning point of the game, even though it was the first series of the game. And I wore that one just because it was a reminder. I didn't put my guys in position. The scheme was fine. The thought was fine. But the application of it, my guys weren't prepared for it. And then last year we played Iowa in a critical situation in the 4th quarter. And we run an empty quick game like on 4th and 2 to 3 in Iowa. They're the only program in America that undersells their guys in the program. I mean, like, if their D-line, if their guy says he's 6'3", 280, he's really 6'5", 312. I swear. And our quarterback last year was playing as 5'11", 6 foot, and I didn't put a cut call on the quick game. I let my guys stay big. We don't cut them down. We got a guy wide open on a little pick rob, and he just can't get the ball off because the ball gets batted down. I never gave a chance for the guys to develop a play. And boy, I kicked myself for not having a more detailed call to slide and cut. And to be honest with you, going into that game, we didn't even have that. Like, even if I'd have called that, I don't think our guys would have known what to do. But that made me re-inventory kind of what we do and how we do it to be able to do that moving forward. And that's how we all are, right? We learn and adapt and improvise and grow. But those 2 in particular, really, there's been plenty of others that I'm like, man, why was I trying to do that? But for 2 very different reasons, the detail within the call. Like, we work hard to vet all the calls, to watch the film. You let them rip, and then there's going to be some that you just get beat on man, whatever, man on man. They have a better call than you do, but like the little details that we can control, those are what we're always fighting, scratching, clawing to avoid putting our team in a bad situation. And those 2 times I did it.
Barry, I really appreciate you sharing that wisdom. I want to unpack one more thing. I want to talk about your best. Okay, what's the best thing that you feel you're currently doing? And this could be relating to game planning, how you're meeting, how you're practicing, how you're play calling. What's the best thing you're doing that could help someone that's listening to this pod?
Well, I think probably where I'm at now is just, it's really important to me for the guys that work with me to make sure they know and understand that this is our offense, right? And I think a couple things. Number one, I'm backing that up more than what I've done before in the past. Like as far as I want input, I value input. Sometimes I can be a little bit of a control freak and say, like to take some input, but yet like kind of hold on to it too tightly instead of trying new things or new ways to do things. When I worked with Will at UTSA, he was phenomenal about that. He would come in with 10 different ways Will's super creative. He'd come in with 10 different ways to run like some of our base plays. And I would be like, okay, yeah, I can't handle those 10, but I can do those two, And that was a really good learning process for me to let guys that have a vision and passion for creativity and thinking outside the box, like, because I'm very much in the box. And see, I think it's important. I guess what I'm stumbling on into it is like, it's important to know who you are as a play caller. Maybe you're the guy that's always outside the box as a play caller. Well, by gosh, you better surround yourself with people that are going to keep you trying to get you crammed in there. So there's a happy medium. My deal is I like to be in the box and I need people around me that can help bring me out of that a little bit. And so knowing who you are is really important, and who you surround yourself is really important. And I think the other thing is there are so many resources, just like this podcast, like on Twitter. I mean, my gosh, you could come up with a good game plan just by keeping your ear to the ground and your eye to the screen and Twitter to learn things, books and film, like all the films that are available. Like I'll watch so much more film than I used to because for me, I need some creative infusion. And so all you got to do is find the film. Like for me, it's obviously readily available for me, but every NFL game, every college game, it's in there. And so like, that's the area that to me that has really helped me is just watching film and watching how somebody else does it and applying that has been really helpful for me. And that's something I'll continue to always do because there's a lot of great minds out there at all levels. I mean, at all levels. And the high school scheme of the week, man, you tweet some things that are really good. Like there's these different people that they can just help you if you just are willing to search and hunt and peck a little bit. And so those would be two of the things that I don't think there's any magic to the formula, to the game planning. One of the things that really helped us a couple of years ago is Lincoln Riley spoke at the Texas High School Convention, and Will and our staff at UTSA was there. And that was really eye-opening about here at Illinois, we're trying to get anywhere between like 32 to 40 plays on a base game plan and try to really hold to that. And I think that's been helpful to us. That's certainly something we adapted to UTSA is I thought that made sense. And like it helped us be able to know we could practice. And so that's probably a more concrete answer to what you're asking. And the other two are a little bit more abstract. But from a game planning standpoint, limiting what we do to where I can practice our situational football more has been a positive thing for me. That doesn't mean it's equated to buku's amount of success for us, but for us, our wheelhouse, that's helped us because at the end of the day, most of the games we played, it's kind of what I was talking about, the 5 plays good that you're going to call the 5 plays bad and the 60 in between. Most of the games at our level are usually dependent on situational football, right? It's like 3rd down, red zone, 4th downs. So if you can limit your game plan, I've been guilty in the past of bidding a little bit too broad in the base game plan, carrying too much volume. Limiting that has helped us focus on the situational aspect of things a little bit better. And it ultimately for us, there's a razor thin margin in our league, and game after game after game comes down to red zone execution, 3rd down, 4th downs, 2-minute, end of half. And it's something we really eat, breathe, and sleep here at Illinois, is just the situational football aspect of things.
Barry, that's some sage advice. Appreciate you sharing that wisdom with us. It's been a pleasure watching your career just continue to grow over the years, and I appreciate your friendship and all the stuff you've done for me. For you guys to get bored, YouTube Barry Lunney Jr. highlights, you'll see a smooth lefty shredding up some defenses back in the day and even ran some triple options. So check that out. Barry, have a great one. Thanks for coming on the show.
Likewise, my man. It's good to see you, and I appreciate you having me on. It's good to talk ball. First day of vacation for me, and I feel like I'm ready to go into fall camp already. So keep up the good work, man, and I appreciate you.
Dub, this one definitely had unique perspective, unique education, and unique experiences of the coach. Tell us what you had to take away from this one.
Well, Keith, my first takeaway was understanding when you create your offense and you build your offense, you got to have an identity. And that's something that I haven't always done a good enough job over the years, and you got to get good at something. Barry always did a great job, and I saw this at the high school level. When you watch his offense every year, you knew exactly what you were going to get, and it really didn't matter because they were so good at all the intangibles within those schemes. They had the answers ready to roll. And I think that's just a good reminder for us as coaches to make sure, no matter what we're doing year in and year out, that we're going to get good at something, and it all has to blend together, and he did a great job at that in the high school. The second thing that I thought was really good that I learned from Barry was just going into the college level and making sure as you build an offense that you surround yourself with coaches that have strengths where you're weak. And it's very important if you get to hire coaches or bring coaches in on your staff, they're stronger in areas where you're weak, so you can make sure you can balance yourself out. And that's some of the things he talked about when he went to UTSA under Coach Traylor that he was able to do. And they were able to build an offense where they all had ownership on, and that allowed them to grow, exponentially with their production. They're doing great jobs there even after he's gone. And the third thing that I really liked that Barry gave us was little maxims that he's learned under great coaches he's been under. And so, like, one of them that I really liked was that he learned from Coach Traylor. He's in a game, and he's talking about, hey, Barry, you can't score if you don't try. And what he meant by that is, when we get in that red area, we got to take some shots. Our job is to score. And I think a lot of times as coaches, we get caught up in, hey, it's 3rd and 5, I got to get 6 yards. Or, hey, it's P&10, I got to get 4 yards. And we're so diving deep into the analytics of just, winning that situation where, we can't lose sight of it. Hey, we got to generate explosive plays and we got to score. He had some other ones in there, but I really like that one. You can't score if you don't try. And that's one I made sure I wrote down for me.
Ton of insights in this one again, Dub. Great job on putting this one together. As always, a great conversation with our guests, and we appreciate the time that you're putting into this.
Thanks, Keith. Enjoying it.
Be sure to visit coachandcoordinator.com and check out the 10% Toolkit, which highlights our partners and some of the offers they have to you as a listener. The link to that is in the show notes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.